If you are sick and tired of posting content to social media, trying to grow your podcast only to get 2 likes and no new downloads, this may come as a surprise, but the problem is not the algorithm. The problem is that you're expecting social media to drive growth to your podcast instead of letting your podcast drive your social strategy. So in this episode, I'm going to show you how to turn your podcast into the engine behind your marketing content that builds trust, keeps you visible, and shortens the path to sales so that you can build an online presence that reinforces both your podcast and the bigger message that you're really here to share. Welcome to Insider Secrets to a Top 100 podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Elmer. Let's make your business binge-worthy. One of the biggest complaints that I hear from existing podcasters who are struggling to grow their show is that, well, I'm putting out content every week on my podcast. I'm being very consistent and I'm posting that content onto social media and it is not driving any new podcast growth. And I'm like, yeah, that's for a few reasons. Number one, because social media is not a direct driver of podcast growth. Number two, because the people who follow you on social media don't want to leave that platform in order to go learn more from you on a different platform. So the goal of social media is not to get more listeners because your audience isn't coming to Instagram or to TikTok or to LinkedIn to find a new podcast to listen to. They're going there to get to know you, which is ultimately what's going to help them decide whether your show is worth listening to in the first place. On the flip side of that, let's say they found your podcast first and then they really liked what they heard. And then they went and found you on social media and they followed you. It's because they want to get to know the person behind the mic. Or if they found you on social media first and started following you and they got to know you a little bit and they really liked the content that you were putting out, yes, they might want to go deeper with you and therefore click through and go see, oh my gosh, you've got a podcast too. Yes, I want to listen to that. Either way, it's about the relationship. Social media is a springboard for that relationship. So this is why when you run your episode through an AI clipping tool and you post that clip and you pull a quote out of it and you write a caption and then you get 3 likes and one was your guest, and suddenly you're not just questioning the post or social media, you're questioning whether you're good as a podcaster, whether that episode was even good, and then blame social media as the problem. But it's not social media that's the problem. It's the way that you're approaching it. Because when you step back and think about it, social media was not built as a growth engine for podcasts. It wasn't built for podcast discovery. It was built as a tool and as a platform for connection and for relationships. So the shift here that needs to happen is to stop thinking of social media as a way to drive podcast growth, but instead starting to think of it like a mirror that shows you what actually resonates with your audience. I believe to my core that your podcast can and should be the source of the content that you create on social media. But social media itself is not going to grow your podcast directly, at least not in the way that you think. So instead of thinking, I'm posting on social media so that I can grow my podcast, I want you to shift that to, I am using my podcast to make social media content easier for me to create. And I'm using my social media to create better content for my podcast while deepening those relationships with current and future listeners. And when you do this, oh my goodness, social media is going to get so much easier for you. It's going to be so much less frustrating when you stop depending on it to grow your podcast. Because first and foremost, you'll have other growth mechanisms in place for your show that are more effective. And then secondly, you can allow social to just then become the tool that it was meant to be all along, which is a platform for conversation and connection. So if you have been spending hours repurposing your episodes into clips and quotes and captions, only get a handful of likes, this is your permission slip to stop. And also to realize that the lack of engagement on those posts is not because your episode was bad. It's because social media isn't where podcast growth starts. Podcast growth depends on 2 things. Number 1, attracting new listeners to your show every day. And number 2, keeping those listeners listening. New listener acquisition happens when you reach new people. You got to get your show in front of cold traffic, people who don't know you yet, who don't like you yet, who don't trust you yet. Social media is made up mostly of warm traffic, people who already know you, who already like you, who already trust you, and who probably already know that you have a podcast, and many of them probably already listen. So the real question here isn't how do I get more listeners from social media? It's how can I start showing up on social media in a way that builds trust with the people who are already following me? So I want you to get this idea of repurposing your podcast content out of your head. Now do whatever you have to do to eradicate that idea from your brain. I don't care if you have to write that down on a piece of paper, go in your backyard, light a match, burn it off, whatever you have to do. Repurposing podcast content is not something we're going to do anymore. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to rename that and we're going to call it what it really is. Upcycling. We're not just repurposing or recycling stale old content or copy pasting a clip, with no context, hoping it goes viral and driving hundreds of listeners to our podcast. No, we're going to take the content that we are already creating for our podcast, and then we're going to strategically turn your best long-form insights into short-form content that meets your audience on the platform where they already are. Not to get more clicks over to your podcast, but to build deeper connections. Because when that connection is strong, that's when people will start and continue choosing your show over everyone else's in their feed. I've actually tested this on my social media. I was talking one day on my Instagram stories about podcast SEO, and this is something I get a ton of questions on all the time. And, I was using all those little engagement stickers and like polls. And one of the polls I had asked, would you like me to create a post on this? Or would you prefer me to teach a masterclass or listen to a podcast episode? And we got a couple votes for masterclass. We got a lot of votes for post, and we got 0 votes for the podcast episode. Now, I have a pretty engaged following, and I was honestly kind of shocked and disappointed to see this because I was like, oh my gosh, it just totally confirmed what I believe to be true about social media, which is the fact that your followers on social media don't want to leave that platform to learn from you, even if they know you have a great podcast, as many of my followers have told me. What was even funnier was that one of my coaches DM'd me, and she sent me a screenshot of that story, and she had voted that she wanted the post on the platform and not the podcast episode, which ironically, I already had those podcast episodes created. So I was kind of hoping to just link those episodes and be like, here you go. I've already created this content for you. No, at the end of the day, what everyone wanted was a post on Instagram. And my coach was like, hi, I'm the problem. It's me. And I followed that up with a story of like, look, this is the proof that your followers on social media don't want to leave that platform to learn from you. And when you can begin to accept that, that is where the freedom starts to happen, because you're no longer trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. So the whole shift here that's at the heart of this episode is using your podcast as the source of your content, but not a replacement for it. And that is a really important distinction, because when you have a podcast, the beauty is you never have to create content from scratch, but you are going to have to manipulate that content to fit the platform that you're posting it on and the audience that you're posting it for. Because yes, having a podcast will make it simpler and easier to generate good content faster, but it is not a content creation shortcut, because your followers want value on the platform they're already on. So if you're sharing a clip from a podcast episode and then gatekeeping the best insights of that episode behind a go listen to the full episode, DM me the number 228 in the caption and I'll send it to you, you're not building curiosity. You're creating friction. And friction doesn't drive engagement. It kills it. So here's a rule that I abide by that has never once failed me, is that you should always give value on the platform that you're showing up on. Every platform, every post, every email you send. Include at least one takeaway that your audience can walk away and apply right then and there, whether or not they ever hit play to get the additional insights from your episode. We're not just teasing content and saying, hey, go listen to the episode. I'm going to tell you all the things in the episode. We're saying, here's one incredible thing that you can do to solve XYZ problem right now that is going to help you. And oh, by the way, I shared 2 more things in this episode that I created for you. So if you want to go deeper, that is when they DM you the number to get the episode link, so that they can go listen. Your goal here is to strike a balance between giving value and not just teasing the episode, but also not giving too much value away in your short form social content so that there is a reason to go and listen to the episode. There's an art and a science to it. It is a skill to develop, and there is a balance to be had. In fact, think of it this way if it helps you. Social media is like the first date. This is where people get a feel for who you are. Do I like this person? Then when they go listen to your podcast, that's kind of like when you're going steady. Do people say that anymore? I do like this person. I want more from them. And then the next step from there, if they like what they hear, that's when they're going to want to put a ring on it and join your program, whether that's buying from you or partnering with you in some sort of way or supporting your brand. So every email, every social post should deliver one nugget of value. If they want more, they can go to the episode. If they want even more, they can buy your program. But you've got to create value on the platform that you're on, because that is ultimately what builds trust. If that value is not there, then what reason do they have to go listen to your episode? What reason do they have to buy your program? So this is how we begin to build trust and thought leadership with the audiences we have and the platforms they hang out on. So lead with value, teach something, share a story, ask a question, invite conversation around the episode, then say, oh, well, this came from episode 242 of such and such podcast where I go deeper on XYZ topic. Comment 242 below and I'll DM you the link. That's it. All you are literally doing is participating in the conversation on the platform that you're posting on while keeping your podcast top of mind for your followers. So when you remove that mental pressure of, oh my gosh, my social media needs to drive traffic to my podcast, social media is going to become a lot easier and more enjoyable. And you're probably going to see your results on social media increase. You're going to get more likes. You're going to get more followers. You're going to get more comments. And if you want to study an incredible example of this at work, I want you to go follow Connor Price. Connor Price is a self-made hip hop artist. Now, I discovered him a few years ago through his content. And turns out, I think I had heard some of his songs before, but I'd never connected the dots that, oh, that's who this person is. And so Connor Price is someone who went to 1 billion+ streams on Spotify as an independent artist. This is like unheard of. Very few artists ever do this. And he grew an enormous following on TikTok and on Instagram because of his content. But what was so incredible about the way that he did this was that he wasn't just posting content like other artists do and being like, hey, new song out now. And they share like a little clip of their song and they're like, go listen, it's out on Spotify. What he did was he actually created skits around elements of the songs that he was putting out there. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out and create skits, but the reason this works psychologically was because he wasn't just repurposing his music and taking a clip from his song and posting it on Instagram and being like, hey guys, new song out now, go listen. What he did was he took a piece of that song. He created a little mini story around it that was very relatable for his audience. And then he posted that skit and then gave a sample of the song in the video. And then that would get people interested. And what people started doing was they started commenting on his posts because the skit was so relatable. And that introduced his music to them. And that's what converted ultimately many of them from his followers into followers also of his music on Spotify. So this is what we want to recreate here, where we are not just repurposing stuff and putting it onto social media and saying, hey guys, go listen to the podcast. What we're doing is we're actually creating mini stories, mini insights, micro moments around certain sections inside of our content that we post on the podcast, and then starting conversations on social media about that are relatable, that are engaging, that are funny, that are thought-provoking. And the other thing that you can pay attention to here is that if you post something that does spark a lot of engagement or that starts a conversation in the comments, that is a clue that your message is resonating. So make a note of that. Create more episode content around that. You've struck a chord with your audience. That is going to be something that you will want to double down on. And that's when you start creating content that deepens trust and that moves the right people further down your funnel. Creating conversations through your podcast that make it easier for those right people to say, I'm in, I want to work with you. And speaking of marketing your podcast, most podcasters think they have a marketing problem. Oh, my marketing efforts aren't working. I put a post out on social media and nobody clicks on it, right? But more often than not, it's not a marketing problem at all. It's a messaging problem. And that starts with your episode titles, because that is one of the last and final gatekeepers standing in the way between a new listener finding your show for the first time and them actually giving you their commitment and hitting play. And the longer you misdiagnose this problem, the longer your podcast is going to stay invisible, while someone out there with half of your expertise gets all of the clicks from your dream listener. So in the next episode, you're going to learn the simple, small, easy to make title tweaks that you can walk away and make right away before you publish your next episode to help you get your show discovered, get it clicked on, and actually listened to by your dream listeners. That's all coming up next to help you make your business binge-worthy.